The knock came at 3:17 a.m. 3 deliberate, slow taps. Not urgent. Not hesitant. Just, wrong. Elena's eyes opened like shutters snapping in a storm. She lay still, her hand immediately sliding over the mound of her belly, instinctively protective. 6 months along. The baby kicked softly in response, as if sensing her tension. The room was too quiet, too cold. The kind of silence that waits for something to go wrong. She blinked again. Maybe she'd imagined it. Dreams often bled into her reality these days, nightmares of screaming wives, accusing mirrors, and blood in bathtubs. But this didn't feel like a dream. This knock had weight. It carried a message, one that hadn't been spoken yet. She reached for the bedside lamp. Click. Nothing. Again. Click. Click. Still nothing. Darkness held the room like a clenched fist. The power was out. No storm. No notice. No flickering beforehand. That didn't sit right. Elena sat up slowly, brushing her blonde hair off her face. Her bare feet touched the cold wooden floor. In the soft distance, she thought she heard a low hum, mechanical, rhythmic. A fridge maybe? Or a screen? She didn't want to believe it, but her heart raced faster. She wrapped her robe around herself, cinched it above the bump, and padded carefully toward the door of the master bedroom. Then another knock. This one, softer. Almost gentle. A whisper of knuckles. And then a voice. Elena. She stopped. Her spine stiffened as if ice ran through it. It wasn't Michael's voice. Michael, her lover. The married man. Her protector. The father of her unborn child. The one who had promised her everything. Promised her freedom, money, love, after his wife's illness ran its course. He wasn't supposed to be home. She had his last message saved. Overnight meeting. Don't go downstairs. I'll call you in the morning. She hadn't questioned it. He was always careful. Always clean. Until now. The voice behind the door came again. Elena. Open the door. Please. Still not loud. Not forceful. But familiar. Too familiar. Then came something she couldn't explain. A faint glow spilled under the door. Cool, bluish light, not fire, not candlelight. A tablet screen. Or a phone. Maybe playing a video. But why here? At 3:17 a.m.? And more importantly, whose device was it? Elena backed away from the door, her breath shallow. The baby squirmed again. Maybe sensing the rise in her cortisol, the fear in her bloodstream. She needed to call someone. But where was her phone? She looked to the nightstand, dead. She stepped toward the dresser, nothing there. She opened the drawer. Gone. Her phone, charger, backup power bank, all gone. The realization hit like a slap. She wasn't just being watched. She was being isolated. I know you're in there, the voice said softly. I just want to show you something. Elena clenched her fists, trying to slow her heartbeat. She wasn't the paranoid type. Michael hated when she was emotional or suspicious. But this was no hallucination. There was a tablet glowing under the door. There was a voice she hadn't heard in weeks. And that voice belonged to a woman who, by all accounts, should be dead. 2 months ago, Michael's wife, Ava, had slipped into a coma. A brain aneurysm, they said. Sudden. Tragic. Elena remembered the exact words Michael had used the night it happened. It's a waiting game now. The doctors say she won't recover. Her heart still beating, but her mind isn't there anymore. He'd cried on her shoulder. Cried harder than she expected. Maybe even too hard. After that, Ava was moved to a private facility. Michael said he couldn't bear seeing her like that. Tubes, machines, the constant smell of antiseptic. He started spending more nights with Elena. He'd even bought her a house, a quiet cottage far from the city, until the estate settled. He didn't want her involved in the legal side, he said. Too messy, he'd said. Too emotional, he'd said. Just focus on the baby, he'd said. And she had. Until now. The light under the door moved slightly. Someone was shifting. The tablet's glow faded for a moment, then intensified again. Then, a voice from the tablet. It was Michael's voice. Crisp. Clear. Recorded. You said the overdose would be clean. That she'd never wake up. Elena's breath caught. She dropped to her knees, crawling closer to the door like a child hiding from monsters. You promised me, Ava. You said this wouldn't leave a trace. Another voice. Not Michael. Her voice. Ava's voice. I said I'd make it look like a stroke. You messed it up, Michael. You got greedy. You should have waited. The voices faded. Static hummed for a moment. Then another recording began. This time Elena heard her own voice. From a conversation she didn't remember being recorded. Do you think they'll suspect anything? About the will? Michael, laughing softly, not if you keep pretending you're just my assistant. That's the beauty of this. No one suspects the secretary. She pressed her hand over her mouth to stop the gasp from escaping. There were recordings. Of all of them. Somehow. The tablet was full of evidence. And whoever was holding it wanted her to hear everything. Elena, the voice returned, right outside the door again. No more recordings. Just breathing. A whisper. I was never in a coma. 3 seconds passed. Maybe 4. Time blurred. They just needed me quiet long enough to make you trust him. To make you carry his air. To let him rewrite the will, without suspicion. Elena shook her head violently. No, she whispered. That's not possible. You think he bought this house for you? Ava asked gently. Look in the basement. See what he left behind. Another pause. You have 5 minutes, Elena. Then I'm gone. And so is the truth. Then, silence. The light vanished. The door creaked as footsteps retreated. Slowly. Softly. Elena waited. 1 minute. Then 2. Then she stood. She opened the door. No one there. But on the ground lay the tablet. She picked it up with shaking hands. The screen was unlocked, paused on a video thumbnail. A folder titled Proof, for Elena. Inside were 10 files. Each named like a chapter. 1. The will. 2. The injection. 3. She knows. 4. The secret room. 5. Basement tapes. 6. The doctor's cut. 7. The inheritance plan. 8. Her real name. 9. Your baby. 10. Confession.mp4. Her fingers hovered over the last one. Then she heard it again. A knock. This time, it came from inside the house. From the basement door. The knock came again. 3 slow taps. But this time, they weren't coming from outside her bedroom. They came from inside the house. From the basement. Elena stood in the hallway, barefoot, still clutching the tablet to her chest like a shield. Her eyes were wide, unblinking, locked on the door at the end of the hallway, the one Michael had told her never to open. "It's just storage," he'd said once, with a smile too soft to be real. "Nothing you need to worry about." But the knock disagreed. The air in the house had shifted. It felt heavier now, like the walls were holding their breath. Even the baby inside her stirred uneasily, as though sensing that the woman carrying it was standing at the edge of something terrible. She took a single step forward. The hallway creaked. Not loud, just enough to remind her she wasn't alone. The tablet screen was still glowing faintly in her hand, the last file still visible. 10. Confession.mp4. She didn't dare tap it yet. Whatever was behind that basement door might render a video meaningless. She needed to know what was in that room. What Ava had meant when she said, "You think he bought this house for you?" Her hand trembled as she reached for the basement doorknob. Cold. Not just from lack of use, it felt intentionally cold. Icy, like the metal itself had been waiting. She turned it. The door creaked open slowly, revealing a steep set of stairs plunging into darkness. Not even an overhead bulb flickered to life. She hesitated at the threshold. Then the tablet vibrated. Once. On its screen, a notification appeared. Motion detected, basement chem 3, 3:21 a.m. Her blood went cold. She didn't even know there were cameras in this house. She clicked the alert. A grainy black and white video feed opened. A timestamp flickered in the corner. The footage was live. And in the lower corner of the frame, someone was standing at the bottom of the basement stairs. Facing up. Elena's heart felt like it had stopped beating altogether. The figure was barely visible, backlit, blurry, but unmistakably there. Long, tangled hair. A hospital gown. Bare feet. Standing still. Watching. Waiting. She clutched the tablet tighter and looked down the staircase in front of her. Pitch black. No movement. No sound. But the camera feed said otherwise. She looked back at the screen. The figure was gone. Just, gone. No blur, no movement, no fade. Vanished. She stepped back instinctively, shutting the door just enough to calm her nerves. Then, for the first time in hours, her mind began to race logically. Why did this house have surveillance cameras? Why was Michael monitoring the basement? More importantly, what else was being recorded? She backed into the kitchen, fumbling for the light switch. Dead. Still no power. But now she could feel something beneath her bare feet. A soft vibration. A hum, mechanical, beneath the floor. It wasn't the fridge. It was deeper. She knelt slowly, placing her hand on the ground. Yes, definitely something was running below the house. Something Michael had never told her about. She returned to the hallway and slowly descended the stairs, one trembling step at a time. Each creak of the wood beneath her feet felt deafening. She reached the bottom. A concrete floor. Cold. Damp. The kind that belonged in bunkers or forgotten cellars. But what shocked her most was what she didn't see: boxes. Old tools. Junk. The basement was empty. Almost. To her right was a metal door. Unlike the rest of the house's rustic charm, this door was industrial, gray, reinforced, with a keypad lock mounted beside it. A red light blinked softly. She didn't know the code. But the tablet might. She opened the basement tapes folder. Inside was a subfolder titled Restricted Access, Ava. It was password protected. She tried the obvious. Michael, denied. Ava, denied. Elena, denied. Then, in a moment of desperation, she tried something Michael once drunkenly whispered in bed during a particularly vulnerable night. "Everything I do for her birthday." She typed 0315. Click. Access granted. Inside were 4 video files. Cam 3, November 15, 24. Cam 3, December 4, 24. Audio recording, Ava's room. Injection footage, final dose. Elena couldn't bring herself to open the last one yet. Instead, she clicked the first video. The footage was silent. Dim. Ava was seated on a cot inside the basement room. Her face was pale, gaunt. She wore a hospital gown, her wrists faintly bruised. A tube ran from her arm into an IV bag above her. She wasn't unconscious. She was awake. Reading. Writing. Staring at the door. At one point, she turned to the camera. Her lips moved. No audio. But her words were clear. "You think I don't know, Michael? You think I don't see what you're doing? One day, you'll slip. And when you do, I'll burn everything you built." Elena dropped the tablet. She stumbled back, barely catching herself against the wall. Ava hadn't been in a coma. She'd been imprisoned. Sedated. Watched. And Elena had been living above it all. All the dinners, the lullabies she sang to her growing belly, the mornings spent in robes and sunlight, all of it happened above Ava's prison. Her hands shook as she reached again for the tablet. The second video showed Ava injecting herself with something, likely a counter. But why now? And why leave the tablet? The last video haunted Elena more than the others. It was labeled Confession.mp4. With trembling fingers, she pressed play. Michael's face filled the screen. Not polished. Not calm. Desperate. Red-eyed. Shirt stained. He was recording himself from the very basement Elena now stood in. "If you're watching this, then Ava's already told you." He sighed. "It wasn't supposed to go like this. I loved her once. But she was slipping. Violent. Paranoid. She threatened to expose everything. Our finances. The fake foundations. The offshore accounts. Everything tied to her name. I didn't want to kill her. I just needed her quiet. Sedated. Just until the new will processed. Until the child, our child, was born." He looked up. Tears filled his eyes. "Elena, if you see this, you have to understand. I did it all for you." Suddenly, there was a knock in the video. Michael looked up. "No, wait, how did you get in?" The screen went black. A sudden noise behind Elena made her jump. The basement door had closed. And then, Ava's voice echoed from somewhere inside the walls. "Now you know the truth. But what are you going to do with it, Elena? Save yourself and your baby? Or protect the man who lied to you, used you, murdered for you?" A pause. Then, "Your next choice decides your ending." Elena didn't realize she was crying until the tears dropped onto the tablet screen. She sat on the cold basement floor, knees drawn to her chest, the concrete biting into her skin. Her fingers hovered over the dark display, still reflecting the last frame of Michael's broken confession. The echo of his voice replayed in her mind, not the tenderness she once trusted, but the controlled regret of a man caught in his own web. "I did it all for you." She whispered it aloud, the words sticking like ash in her throat. He hadn't done it for her. He'd done it for the money. For control. For power over 2 women, and now, the unborn child that could rewrite everything. Because she finally understood. The baby was the final asset. And she? She had never been anything more than the vessel. Above her, the house creaked. A slow, shifting groan, not wind, not time, but movement. Someone was in the house. Or still in it. The camera footage had shown Ava downstairs. But now, she could be anywhere. Elena stood, brushing off her robe. She pressed her hand to her stomach. The baby was still. Almost too still. But she couldn't panic now. Survival required clarity. She had two options. Confront Ava, if she was still here. Flee, and leave this all behind, evidence in hand, tablet clutched, call the police. But both roads led to the same inevitable intersection. Michael. He wasn't here now, but he would return. He always did. And when he found the tablet gone, the basement door open, the secrets spilled. Would he kill to cover them again? Back upstairs, the house greeted her like a predator. Everything seemed still, almost staged. The kitchen lights remained dead, but the faint blue glow from the tablet offered just enough light to see the way. She walked past the familiar, the breakfast bar where Michael had kissed her belly 2 nights ago, the living room couch where they read nursery name lists, the framed photo of a beach they'd never actually visited. And there, on the coffee table, sat something new. A single silver envelope. No stamp. No name. Just a handwritten note on the front. Before you run. Elena stared at it. She looked around the room, empty. Quiet. Then she tore it open. Inside was a printed bank statement. Her name. Her national ID. And a deposit made 3 weeks ago. $2.5 million. Memo. Trust transfer, final inheritance claim. Authorized by M. Langdon. Her hand trembled. She turned the page, and felt the ground slip out from beneath her. Attached was a copy of Ava's will. Signed. Stamped. Notarized. 6 months old. It read. In the event of my incapacitation or death, all my personal assets, including liquid funds and property holdings, are to be transferred in trust to the unborn child of Michael Langdon and Elena Rivers, under guardianship of Elena Rivers until the child reaches 21 years of age. Beneath it, Ava's signature. Beneath that, Michael's. Elena couldn't breathe. Ava had known all along. She'd signed the future away while alive. And now she was back. But why? To reclaim what was hers? To punish Michael? To take the baby? Or something worse? Her thoughts were interrupted by a faint ding. The tablet lit up. New file uploaded, live feed. She tapped it. A grainy video opened, the driveway, from a camera she hadn't known existed. Michael's car. Pulling in. Now. Her chest tightened. She had minutes. Maybe seconds. The front door creaked. She turned off the tablet, stashed it behind the couch cushions, and stepped into the hallway, her heart pounding in her ears. The key turned. The door opened. Michael entered, dripping rain. He stopped in the foyer, frozen. Then, Elena? His voice. The same smooth baritone that had once made her believe he was her only lifeline. You're awake, she said coldly. I told you I'd be late, he replied cautiously, setting his keys down. Why are you standing in the dark? She didn't answer. Her hand brushed her side where the tablet had been, her eyes locked on his face. Power's out, she said flatly. That's so, he said, slowly scanning the room. Funny. Everything was working when I left. His tone was shifting. Testing her. Measuring how much she knew. She smiled softly. I had a visitor. Did you? He asked, almost too calmly. He stepped closer. She didn't move. You know, Michael, she said, it's strange. I always thought love was the only reason someone would lie like you do. But now I think it's fear. And greed. Michael froze. That was enough confirmation. She continued. She's alive, Michael. Ava. She's been alive this whole time. His jaw tightened. Barely. But it was there. That's not possible. No, she said, stepping aside. You should check the basement. Michael looked at her for a long time. Then slowly walked past her, down the hallway. She waited. Exactly 15 seconds. Then ran. Not out the front. To the kitchen, to the couch, grabbed the tablet. Then to the garage door. She'd seen Michael type the code before. She punched it in. Beep. Beep. Green. The door lifted slowly. She turned. Michael was there. Standing at the other side of the kitchen. Not a trace of emotion on his face. What are you doing with that? He asked, voice low. Leaving, she said, swallowing hard. And going to the police. Michael stepped forward. Don't be stupid, Elena. Another step. You think anyone's going to believe you? A mistress? Pregnant with another woman's husband's child? You think they'll see a victim? She didn't flinch. I have proof, she said. Your confession. Her footage. The will. The bank transfers. He paused. And the baby? He asked, eyes flicking to her stomach. You'll never touch him, she said. He gave her a long, cold look. Then I guess we both lose. And then, the last thing she expected. Ava appeared. From the hallway behind him. Disheveled. Silent. Face pale, but eyes sharp. Michael didn't turn. But he felt her. Knew. How long? He asked without facing her. Ava's voice was quiet. Deadly calm. Since the first time you drugged me. He exhaled. A slow, bitter breath. I should have finished it. You did, Ava said. But not how you think. And then, she raised something in her hand. Not a gun. Not a knife. A recording device. They're already listening, Michael. They've been listening for days. His face collapsed. Not rage. Not panic. Just acceptance. He looked at Elena. He's your problem now. Then he turned and walked toward the basement. Ava didn't stop him. Neither did Elena. 43 minutes later, the police arrived. Ava had already vanished. Left no trace. Not even the envelope. Elena was questioned, but not arrested. The tablet was handed over. The recordings processed. The will verified. The bank transfer linked. Baby Lucas sleeping peacefully in her arms, and reread the unsigned letter. He was never the real danger. But now you've learned to choose. Choose well. For him. Ava's single initial felt like a breath upon her neck. Was it a warning? A reassurance? Or an invitation into a game far more twisted than even Michael's machinations? Elena didn't know. She only knew her second choice, the one she was told to guard jealously, her son. 1. Aftermath of the fall. 2 weeks had passed since the police raid. Michael Langdon had vanished without a trace. The media had a field day: billionaire heir to net worth disappears, pregnant mistress turned mother, heroine or accomplice? The headlines stung. Elena had expected sympathy. Instead, she found prying cameras and whispered rumors on every sidewalk. Her lawyer, a sharp woman named Priya Mehta, advised caution. No interviews. No statements beyond what you've already told the investigators. Let the documents speak. And speak they did. The confession video, the basement footage, the will, each became irrefutable proof that the mistress had been the victim all along. Yet the court of public opinion was fickle. Some accused her of greed, others pitied her. None truly understood the terror of living atop a buried nightmare. Elena decided, she would write her own narrative. Not through tabloids or talk shows. Through something far more powerful, her own strength. 2. Ava's return. It was a Wednesday afternoon when the knock came. This knock was different, 3 rapid, firm knocks, followed by 2 slow ones. Morse code for SOS, Ava had whispered once. Elena's heart skipped. She nearly dropped Lucas as she rose, heart hammering in her ears. There was no time to think. She cradled Lucas against her chest and crept to the front door. Through the peephole, she saw a woman whose gaunt face she recognized immediately, Ava, more haggard than ever, but alive. She opened the door a crack. Ava's eyes, once dull with feigned unconsciousness, blazed with desperation. "You need to let me in," she rasped. "They'll kill me if I go back." Elena's mind raced. "Who, Ava?" she whispered. "Michael is gone." Ava shook her head. "No. Not him anymore. There's someone else. He's the one who fed Michael the idea." Elena closed the door just enough to secure it. "What are you talking about? Who?" Ava pressed her hand to the door, gaze flicking to the street. "The real power behind everything isn't Michael Langdon. It's his family." Elena frowned. "His family?" "The Langdons have always had secrets deeper than anyone imagines. You think Michael inherited his schemes? He was just their latest pawn. They pull strings from the shadows." Ava's pale lips trembled. "He's still alive, you know. Michael. He's halfway across the world, rebuilding. But the real puppet master wants something only you can give." Elena's blood ran cold. What could they? He's not just an heir to a fortune. He's the key to their empire. 3. Secrets of bloodlines. That night, Elena didn't sleep. She replayed Ava's warning, turning each word over like a sinister jewel. Who were the Langdons, really? She knew Michael's father had died under mysterious circumstances, his mother had been a recluse, and the patriarch's will had funded charities no one could track. Rumors whispered of shell companies, art heists, offshore trusts. Never direct murder, until now. She decided to dig deeper. Late the next day, with Priya's help, Elena obtained Michael's family tree and business filings. She pored over company registrations, dozens of entities in Panama, Switzerland, the Caymans. Charitable foundations whose public faces differed from their hidden records. A network stretching across continents. At 2 a.m., she discovered a pattern. A shell corporation named Aurora Trust held controlling stakes in a biotech firm making experimental sedatives. Similar to what had been used on Ava. And at the helm of Aurora Trust was a name she hadn't expected, Isabella Langdon, Michael's aunt. Isabella Langdon had never appeared in public. Corporate records listed her as retired benefactor, age 59, no known residence. But she had signature authority. She had orchestrated every infusion of money, every transfer of Ava's assets, every hush agreement. Elena closed her laptop, heart racing. Ava had been right. The real puppeteer was still at large. 4. A raid at dawn. Elena and Priya devised a plan: gather evidence, go to the authorities again, and unmask Isabella. They needed more proof than just corporate filings. They needed a confession, like Michael's, or a direct connection. That required breaking into the Langdon estate's main office, a gated compound in the suburbs with biometric scanners and armed guards. Not a job for 2 women, a newborn, and a lawyer. And yet, it was necessary. They assembled a small team. Javier, a former private investigator with a knack for lockpicking. Maya, a digital forensics expert who could hack cameras. Priya, with legal clearance to subpoena documents. At 3 a.m., under the cover of darkness, they descended on the estate. Maya disabled the motion sensors, Javier slipped past the rear gate, Priya used a forged subpoena to access the library archive. Elena, heart-pounding, kept Lucas strapped to her chest in a specially designed carrier. Inside, they found rows of filing cabinets and a hidden safe behind a movable bookcase. Maya worked on the electronic lock while Javier kept watch. Priya extracted a file folder from the safe. Project Aurora, Phase 2. Lead investigator, Dr. Helena Marks. Subject, controlled sedation in domestic settings. Budget, $12.4 million. The documents detailed experiments on sedatives, dosage protocols, autonomous surveillance systems, and contingency plans for asset recovery. Footnotes referenced. Subject 0324B, a pregnant female in a clinical trial, no name assigned. Elena's blood ran cold. Subject 0324B, that was Ava. And her baby, Lucas, would have been in the database as 0324C. She rifled through the papers, heart hammering. Page 37, in the event of subject awakening or discovery, execute containment or termination protocols. Subject's offspring to be reassimilated under Aurora guardianship. Termination protocols. Reassimilation. They planned to kidnap her son. Elena's knees buckled. Priya reached out to steady her. Maya closed the safe. We got everything, she whispered. Javier nodded. Let's move. 5. The confrontation. They exited into a back corridor, silence heavier than stone. Elena hovered near the door, Lucas in her arms. Priya checked her watch. 2 minutes before first shift guard makes rounds. They hurried to the van. As they slipped through the wrought iron gate, headlights flared. A black SUV blocked the road. 2 figures stepped out. A tall woman in a tailored coat, hair silver at the temples, and a man in a dark suit. Isabella Langdon. And her bodyguard. Elena's blood froze. Isabella's voice was cool, precise. Miss Rivers. Elena gripped Lucas tighter. You know who I am. Isabella's lips curved. I have no quarrel with you, Ms. Rivers. Michael was a disappointment, but you. Stay away from him, Elena spat. Stay away from my son. Isabella nodded once. Very well. But understand this, Aurora Trust is not a charity. It's a legacy. A legacy that requires an heir. One they can control. She gestured behind her. You have taken much from us. But I am offering you a choice. I don't make deals with murderers, Elena said. Isabella's gaze flicked to Lucas. He belongs with his family. Under my protection. You can try to raise him alone. Or you can join us. Never. Elena's voice trembled with fury and exhaustion. Isabella sighed, as though dealing with a child's tantrum. So be it. She tapped a device at her wrist. Gentlemen, she said. 2 bodyguards emerged from the SUV, weapons drawn. Let her go, Priya said, stepping forward. Isabella shrugged. Your choice, Ms. Rivers. And with that, she turned and climbed into the SUV, the engine's roar echoing through the quiet suburb. The bodyguards advanced. Elena felt a hand on her shoulder. Maya's eyes said, run. They sprinted across the lawn. Shots rang out, bullets pinging off metal fences. Javier pushed Elena through the gate, Priya kicked the gate latch shut just as the guards fired again. Maya dove into the van and locked the doors. Drive. They sped away as Isabella's SUV trailed behind them for a moment, then peeled off into the night. 6. New alliances. Back at Elena's house, dawn was breaking. Inside, baby Lucas slept obliviously, as though the world's conspiracies couldn't touch him. Elena paced the living room, mind whirling. Priya, Javier, and Maya gathered around her. She won't be satisfied, Priya said quietly. No, Elena agreed, voice hoarse. Aurora Trust will stop at nothing. Maya tapped her tablet. I've already leaked the documents to multiple international news outlets. Aurora skeletons are coming out of more closets than just ours. Javier nodded. But they'll retaliate. Isabella's resources are vast. Elena looked down at Lucas. His tiny hand curled around her finger. Then we build our own network. We fight fire with fire. By what authority? Maya asked. By his, Elena replied, pointing to Lucas. He's the legal heir. And under guardianship of Elena Rivers. We have the law on our side. Priya smiled for the first time in days. Then let's get to work. 7. A legacy reclaimed. Over the next weeks, Elena became a different person. Early mornings found her on the phone with reporters, human rights advocates, lawmakers. She gave interviews guardedly, always with Lucas in her arms, a living testament to her story. The narrative shifted. No longer a mistress, but a mother fighting a clandestine empire. Charities pledged investigations. Governments opened inquiries. Aurora Trust's assets were frozen pending review. Banks sued to undo the shell companies. And hidden among the chaos, Ava reappeared, this time on Elena's doorstep during a midday visit. They embraced, tears flowing freely. Two women once pitted against each other, now allies, united by motherhood and survival. Ava's eyes were brighter than they had ever been. You kept your promise, she whispered. Elena kissed her on the forehead. We both did. They crafted a joint statement. Ava would assume guardianship of Lucas if anything happened to Elena. Elena would assume guardianship of Ava if she ever lost her sanity again. Together, they became a force few could match, a mother, a survivor, and a woman once thought dead. 8. Epilogue, Whispers of Tomorrow. 6 months later, on a crisp autumn day, Elena walked with Lucas through a public park. He toddled at her side, golden curls bouncing, laughter bright against the rustle of leaves. They passed a news kiosk with headlines. Aurora Trust under investigation, Langdon secrets revealed. Mother and child shine light on global conspiracies. Elena paused at a bench, watching Lucas chase a pigeon. She felt a hand on her shoulder. Ava, smiling, handed her coffee. Look at him, Ava said softly. He's beautiful. Elena nodded, chest full. He's our future. Ava's eyes scanned the skyline. You know they'll be back. Elena met her gaze. Let them come. She paused, turning toward the horizon. We're ready. And in the distance, beyond the city lights and the turning seasons, the shadows of the Langdon Empire stirred, no longer invincible, but lurking, waiting for an opening. But Elena, Ava, and Lucas stood between them and the world. And this time, they wouldn't be silenced. The Langdon name had once stood atop towers of wealth and whispers. But since Elena Rivers tore down their curtains of secrecy, the world had begun to see them for what they were, manipulators, orchestrators, and shadow-bound architects of control. But exposing the truth wasn't the same as destroying the roots. Because roots dig deeper. And some houses, once built for power, never stop watching. 1. The invitation. It was late autumn when the letter arrived. Not through mail. Not through courier. It was lying on the baby's crib, inside Elena's secure apartment. No alarms were triggered. No windows breached. Just a folded ivory envelope with gold ink. Elena Rivers. A final chance. One night. Come alone. Langdon Estate. No signature. Just the Langdon crest pressed into the wax, a serpent devouring its tail, the Ouroboros. She felt her stomach knot. The estate had been seized, condemned, and declared a historical crime scene. No one had legal access. But someone had keys. Someone still owned the locks. Elena stared at the crib. Lucas was safe. He smiled up at her with innocent eyes that hadn't seen how deep evil could crawl. Ava stepped into the room, reading the fear on Elena's face. They want you back inside, she whispered. Why? Elena didn't answer at first. Her fingers clenched the envelope. To end this. Or to start something worse. 2. Preparing for war. Elena, Ava, and Priya met in the basement of a small chapel outside the city, a safe house used by whistleblowers. Maps were spread across the table. Security footage from past visits to the Langdon estate. Structural schematics. Infrared scans. Priya was skeptical. You go in alone, it's a trap. If I don't go, Elena said, they keep coming. Lucas never gets peace. Ava nodded grimly. We don't have the power they do. But we have truth. And we have preparation. So they devised a failsafe. Ava would plant trackers in Elena's coat and shoes. Javier, their old ally, would wait 2 blocks from the estate with comms. Priya would have a red button. Send the documents they'd been holding to every journalist, every politician, every Interpol officer worldwide, if Elena didn't exit within 6 hours. You sure about this? Ava asked. No, Elena whispered. But that house raised a monster. Maybe it'll bury one. 3. Entering the lion's den. The Langdon estate stood like a mausoleum under the moonlight. A 19th-century monster of brick and marble, surrounded by dead trees and fog thick enough to taste. Elena approached the main gate. It swung open silently before she could knock. Inside, silence hummed louder than sound. No lights. No servants. Just the long, echoing creak of her boots on aged floors. And then a voice. Feminine. Smooth as honey laced with arsenic. Welcome home, Elena. Isabella Langdon. She stepped out of the shadows, draped in a high-collared coat, every inch the queen she imagined herself to be. Her silver hair gleamed like a blade under candlelight. Elena didn't move. You left a letter in my baby's crib. Had to get your attention. You've been difficult to reach. Try email, Elena snapped. Isabella chuckled, a sound too practiced to be real. You were never the enemy. Not truly. You were an unexpected variable. Elena's jaw tightened. Lucas isn't your legacy. He's my son. He's more than that, Isabella whispered. He's the product of a century of planning. You think Michael was spontaneous? That pairing was arranged long before you met him. Elena froze. What? Isabella gestured toward a side room. A nursery. Familiar. Elena stepped in and gasped. It was identical to Lucas's room. Same layout. Same hand-carved crib. Same mural of stars and animals. We've had this waiting since Michael turned 16, Isabella said softly. It wasn't about love. It was about blood. For the project. In the center of the room, an old monitor flickered on. Grainy black and white footage played, scientists in lab coats. Medical vials. Children in observation rooms. Project Heirloom, Isabella said. A multi-decade program. Matching genetic material for ideal outcomes. Michael was born from one. You and Lucas? Another iteration. Elena's throat went dry. You experimented on children. We engineered continuity, Isabella said. Call it what you want. More screens lit up around the room. Birth certificates. Surveillance footage. Notes on Elena's childhood, education, medical history. She staggered back. You've been watching me since I was a child. Isabella nodded. You were perfect. Smart. Resilient. Fertile. Your family's DNA tested strong for longevity, cognition, emotional stability. Your entire life was a corridor leading to that child. Elena's breath came in shallow gasps. She wanted to run, scream, burn the place down. But then she remembered her purpose. Why call me now? She said through clenched teeth. Because, Isabella said, stepping close, Lucas's development is not going as predicted. That stopped Elena cold. What do you mean? He's resisting our cues, Isabella said. You may not have noticed. But we've already begun subtle neural conditioning. Background tones in your apartment. Screen pulses. Embedded sleep messaging. Elena's scream died in her throat. They were still in her life. He doesn't respond, Isabella murmured. He's different. You made him that way. You broke the system. And now we need you to fix it. Elena stared at her. You want me to reprogram my child for you? Or you can give him to us, Isabella said. Raise him in a place where he belongs. Where his potential will be realized. Elena turned away, rage flooding her chest like acid. No, she said. You don't own me. You don't own him. Isabella's smile cracked. Then you've made your choice. The doors slammed shut. 5. The escape. A hiss filled the room, gas. Elena grabbed the heavy crib and smashed a window with its edge. She leapt out, landing hard on the wet grass below. Behind her, alarms triggered. She ran. Sprinting through the overgrown garden. Her comm crackled. Elena? Status? They tried to gas me. Pull the plug. Initiate broadcast. Ava's voice. On it. Get to the backup car. Javier's en route. Suddenly, headlights. A black van peeled into the courtyard. Langdon security. Elena darted into the greenhouse. Broken glass. Roots. Decay. She crouched behind a pillar. Footsteps. 1 guard. 2. She yanked a rusted shovel from the dirt and smashed it into the first guard's head. The second turned, she kicked him into a vat of water. Out the rear gate. Javier was waiting, engine roaring. Get in. She dove into the passenger seat. As the estate shrank behind them, flames erupted from the east wing. You did that? She asked. Javier smiled grimly. Just a distraction. But maybe, it's finally falling apart. 6. The fallout. The next day, every outlet ran the story. Langdon Dynasty's eugenics project exposed. Project Heirloom, the billionaire blood cult. Mother of miracle child escapes death in family estate. The United Nations launched an emergency probe. Interpol raided Aurora's last known facilities. Isabella Langdon disappeared. Vanished. Not a trace. And Lucas? He thrived. Tests showed no trace of manipulation. No hidden programming. No brain alterations. He was just a boy. But a boy born of choice, not design. 7. A home reclaimed. 6 months passed. Then a year. Elena and Ava bought a farmhouse outside the city, surrounded by fields and silence. A place where no cameras lingered, no watchers loomed. They raised Lucas together, one mother by blood, the other by fire. And some nights, when the wind howled just so, Elena would rise and walk to his room. She'd check his breathing, stroke his hair, whisper promises into the quiet. No more experiments. No more watchers. Just life. Real, messy, imperfect life. 8. Epilogue, The Girl at the Gate. 3 years later, on a cloudy afternoon, a girl stood at the edge of the farm. She wore a simple dress. Her eyes were too old for her face. Elena watched from the porch. In her small hands, a worn manila folder trembled. The label read, Project Heirloom, Subject 0302A. Inside were records, photos, genetic comparisons. And the kicker, a DNA match report. 99.94% maternal match, Elena Rivers. Elena dropped to her knees. Her mind raced through everything she knew, about the Langdons, about Aurora, about Project Heirloom. They had always played a longer game. Now she realized, they hadn't just been planning with Michael. They'd taken from her before she ever knew it. Clara blinked up at her. She wasn't frightened. She wasn't confused. They told me you might not want me. Elena wept, her arms reaching out. They lied. She held the girl close, as her own heart began to tear open anew. 2. The Ghost Network. That night, Ava, Priya, and Javier gathered in the farmhouse living room. The lights were off, windows boarded for security. Clara slept in the next room, breathing softly. Elena laid the folder on the table. Everyone leaned in. Priya's voice was brittle. This changes everything. If they had embryos from before you even met Michael. They were creating heirs even without your knowledge. Ava added, she's not just another victim. She's a signal. They're still operating. Somewhere underground. Javier tapped the last page, a destination stamped in faint red ink. Facility 6 Delta Coordinates, redacted clearance, Omega, 13. Facility 6 Delta doesn't exist on any of the maps we had, Javier muttered. But Priya knew what to do. Let me wake the Ghost Network. The Ghost Network was a quiet group of defectors, hackers, and internal scientists who had once worked for Aurora and fled with secrets locked behind retinal scans and silence pacts. Now they were a whisper chain of information. Priya messaged 3 of them. Only one replied. Username, Omega_retired. 6 Delta is real. It's where they made the duplicates. The perfected ones. Not hybrids like Lucas. Not partials like Clara. They were making something else. A pause. They called it Project Resurrection. 3. Resurrection Protocol. Elena couldn't sleep. Clara's arrival had broken something open inside her, but it had also sharpened her clarity. She sat in the study, watching old surveillance footage from their sting on Isabella Langdon. One file stood out now that hadn't before. A series of numbers. A name. Subject 1 our codename, Aurora Prime. It wasn't Lucas. It wasn't Clara. It was something else. Someone else. Another child. A file folder showed an adolescent face, blurred, unfinished. Their features were vaguely familiar. A chilling blend of Elena, Michael, and someone else. Why would they need a prime? Elena asked Ava. Ava hesitated. You build a prime when you expect to lose everything. It's a reboot. A backup. Like a digital seed vault for humanity's worst tendencies. Javier scanned the last message from Omega_retired. There's something else. Subject Prime has a failsafe. Something called the initiator signal. If activated, it calls every surviving Langdon loyalist. A signal to rise again. Elena went still. Then we find Prime before they do. 4. Facility 6 Delta. The facility was buried beneath a decommissioned Cold War site in Greenland. Access was restricted. Climate made it nearly unreachable. But Echoes had a pilot. And a mission. They reached the perimeter on snowmobiles under aurora-lit skies, the sky shimmering like oil and light. A hatch beneath the ice. Priya cracked the biometric scanner with stolen Langdon clearance codes. The door opened. A rush of sterilized air greeted them, too clean, too cold. They stepped into silence. The facility was dark, but active. Monitors pulsed. Medical equipment hummed softly. Walls were covered in embryo tanks, suspended in fluids. Each labeled by iteration. Elena's blood froze. Clara wasn't the only one. Hundreds of failed subjects. Marked as expired. Notes detailed behavioral rejection, emotional resistance, lack of obedience. But in the center of the lab was a cryochamber. One capsule. Subject 1R, Aurora Prime. A teenage body. Female. Eyes closed. Veins traced with glowing lines. Not asleep. Stored. Waiting. Javier began uploading data. Ava disabled the locking systems. But Priya saw it first. A red light. Blinking. Increasing. They triggered the initiator. 5. Awakening. The walls vibrated. Sirens howled from deep below. Automatic systems engaged. Elena stared at the capsule, where Aurora Prime's eyes began to flutter. A hiss. The cryogel drained. The girl awoke. She opened her eyes slowly. Green. Unblinking. She stared at Elena. You're the source. Her voice was monotone. Unpracticed. Not hostile, but not human, either. Elena stepped forward. You don't have to follow them. Aurora tilted her head. They made me from you. Why would I not follow? Because I choose. But I was programmed. Ava whispered, she's waking faster than expected. Neurological pathways are reorganizing. She may override herself. Javier shouted from the console. Initiator signal is pinging over a dozen old satellites. Reassembling nodes. If she leaves, they follow. Elena stepped close to the girl. She looked 16. Fragile. Infinite. You can break their chain. Be your own signal. Aurora blinked. You cry. They never did. She reached for Elena's face. Then looked at her own hand. Why do I feel warm? A pause. Why do I feel? 6. The choice. The system gave them 10 minutes before lockdown. Guards were on their way. The signal was bouncing to private servers around the world. Ava handed Elena a choice. We can inject her with a neuroblocker. Shut her down permanently. Or. Elena knew the or. Or let her walk out. Let her choose. Aurora Prime looked at her. Then at the monitors. Then back. I don't want to be them. Elena stepped forward. Then don't. Aurora moved to the console. Her fingers danced across the keys. Line by line, she dismantled the protocol. Severed the satellites. Burned the routes. Javier stared. She's rewriting herself. Ava swallowed. She's the signal now. 7. 3 years later. The world never knew what happened in Greenland. The Langdon loyalists never rose. The initiator signal vanished. The name Aurora Trust was quietly buried, dismantled through a network of bankruptcies and legal demolitions. But the truth lived in the quiet lives Elena helped raise. Clara, Lucas, and Aurora. The girl who once would have awakened the world's worst ambitions now tended to a library in the countryside. She spoke little. Smiled often. She read everything. She planted gardens. Sometimes she stared at the stars and asked Elena, "Do you think they remember me?" Elena always answered the same way. "You are not their memory. You are your own story." Epilogue, the final letter. One day, Ava received a small package. Inside, a flash drive. One file. A video. Isabella Langdon, gray-haired and sickly, stared into a handheld recorder. "If you're seeing this, you won. But understand this. Legacy is not about control. It is about continuity. Even if you burn the garden, the wind still carries seeds. Aurora was only the beginning. And somewhere, in some child, in some future, the idea will bloom again." She smiled faintly. "Unless you teach them better." Ava shut the laptop and turned toward the future.